listening to the Project Ignite podcast,
where real digital entrepreneurs reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies to help you ignite and grow your online business.
ProjectIgnite.com. Your digital business starts here.
Now, here's your host, Derek Gale.
Welcome back to another episode of the Project Ignite podcast, a podcast designed to skip all the hype and all that BS and bring you people who are actually doing real things on the internet and who are going to share actionable tips, strategies, things that you can actually take away from this episode, apply to your business, and actually benefit from. So, again, this is your host, Derek Gale. You guys know me. If this is your first episode, well, welcome to the podcast. If it's not, welcome back. And today, we're going to talk about something that is so important in the world of digital marketing that, frankly, not enough people pay attention to. And that is, wait for it, yes, email deliverability. And to help me explore this so important topic is a gentleman by the name of Chris Lang, who's an expert at breaking down complex delivery issues and helping marketers get their email to the inbox. And frankly, that's all that matters, because if your emails that you're sending to your subscribers, to your customers, are being filtered into spam or even the promotions tab, they're not seeing it. And this is a gentleman whose delivery skills have saved so many companies. He's worked with companies like ClickFunnels, Dean Graziosi, Tony Robbins, and let's not forget about yours truly, me. I reached out to him, going back a few years ago when we were having massive deliverability issues, and he helped us fix those. So this is somebody that has had a major impact on my business, and if you listen closely, can have a major impact on yours. So Chris, welcome back to the podcast. How you doing?
I'm great and so glad to be here. I mean, I'm honored not just to be interviewed by Derek Gale, a past client and someone that understands what I do and how we measure email and how we repair delivery and deliverability. So I think you're the perfect person to guide me through to help your listeners and not allow me to devolve into technobabble, because God knows the eyes glaze over as soon as you say the word IP address. I was taught that by Russell.
Well, that's it for sure. And I mean, just to give everybody some history, I actually met Chris when I first interviewed him on this podcast going back too many years ago. And it was because I was like, okay, I need somebody that can talk about deliverability. I know what a big issue it is. And I started reaching out, and who's the deliverability person, like the expert that doesn't work for one specific company that's trying to sell their email software. And I kept, all roads led back to Chris, and we did an interview, and a lot of people learned I learned a lot out of that. And then I took over some companies, a company in specific that was doing nothing for email marketing. And so when I took it over, rebuilding all the systems and marketing and processes and stuff like that, when I took it over, they were doing nothing, sometimes 10, maybe 15, 20 grand a month in email. And we're talking from a monstrous database, hundreds of thousands of people, made no sense. And, it was Chris who opened my eyes to what needed to be done to salvage that list and completely change how I thought about email marketing. Because to give our listeners a little background, I've been email marketing since the 1990s. In fact, my mentor and first business partner, Corey Rudel, and I, we used to sell email marketing software called MailLoop that was actually installed on your bloody PC and would go out and multi-thread and email. And a lot of the old school marketers might even remember that software. It was used all over the place. So I've been doing this for a very long time. And for those of us that's been at it for a long time, how you treat your lists has changed massively. And if you're doing it the wrong way, you're not you're not going to get the value out of your list. And so, I mean, after listening to Chris and fixing our deliverability, uh, every single month since then, and we're going on years now, our email marketing has grown. And, just this November, it was fascinating, during Black Friday sales and stuff like that, when, deliverability is tough, we generated over $600,000 in revenue from our emails over a period of a week. Unbelievable. Highest month of email ever. And I can honestly say I couldn't have done it without Chris and his knowledge and expertise. Uh, so this is a guest that, you know what, I'll vouch for this person and what they're going to tell you. And so let's dive into this. Let's start with the state of, email marketing and deliverability. I mean, email marketing, it's funny. It ebbs and flows, right? You get the new hot platform. Oh, Facebook Messenger marketing, blah, blah, blah. Nobody does emails. Second, email's going to die. Email's never going to die, right? It's one of our highest ROI channels, no question. But it's always evolving and changing. And so let's talk about deliverability. If you had to sort of summarize the state of email deliverability today, where would we be?
Okay, so let's define delivery versus deliverability. And I'm going to coin a new phrase around email and talk about some things no one else ever has. We'll get to that in a bit, but let's talk delivery versus deliverability. Delivery is when my email server send her team, Mark Goldman and I's SMTP platform, when my email server talks to, say, Gmail. Now, that's delivery. And depending on whether or not the email is accepted and whether or not it goes to the spam folder or whether or not it goes to the inbox, completely dependent upon the reputation, the domain reputation of my email server and the IP reputation. God, we have 2,000 of them. Depending on the IP reputation, that's delivery. That's the first thing that happens. Either you go to spam or you are on your way to the inbox due to delivery. That's your ESP. That's your email platform. They have to do their job. After the email is accepted, because you really have to be on an absolute crap platform for the email not to be accepted. If your email isn't accepted, you're obviously in the wrong place. After the email is accepted, then we start to talk deliverability. And deliverability that word came along about 6-7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, as Gmail started to rise. And it's what happens to your email after it's on the way to the inbox. And as Gmail has, you don't have a list anymore, Derek. You have a Gmail list. It's at least 75% of your active footprint. My last 3 clients, 76%, 88%, 80% Gmail. That used to make people's jaw drop, 4 or 5 years ago. The last time we were on a podcast, people were like, I'm 43% Gmail. Now they're like, yeah. And it's no big reveal, aha moment. Everyone knows you're talking to Gmail at least 75% of the time. Now, deliverability is what happens, and Gmail is very complex because we're talking to primary tab, the promotions tab. If they have the updates tab enabled, completely different Gmail reveals itself. Play with your settings, enable the updates tab, and watch your primary tab turn into nothing but personal communications. Not a lot of people do that, but I mean, Gmail people love to play with their settings. They love to segment email, etc. We all do it. We're all looking to save time. Time is money, as it's always been said for, 100 years. But now it's no longer Microsoft, Yahoo, AOL. That's a yes or a no. Either I go to spam or I go to the inbox. Gmail is highly complex. It's personalized, highly personalized. It's dynamic. Depending on your settings, you'll reveal completely different versions of Gmail. Go play with it. You'll see what I see. And that's really the state of email today. Also, we got lucky this year in 2019, not lucky with COVID, but lucky with Gmail because of it. 28,000 people work at the Sunnyvale complex and the Googleplex. If you've ever been there, it's amazing. They feed 28,000 people, high-end catered meals 3 times a day. Suddenly, these people can't go to work. And Gmail did not come out with its new algorithm this year. They tried. I saw a number of clients. Now realize I have 30 active clients in my software. Mm-hmm. So I get to look at things from many different ways, many different versions. But because Gmail remoted, they did not roll out their typical every 3-year cycle of a new algo. We've seen it 2009, 2010, in the priority inbox, 2013, promotions tab, 2016, biggest algo change everywhere. Everyone went to spam for years. We should have seen this algo change come this year. It did not. And I'm telling you, it's coming in 2021 because they're back to work. We've seen the Google Slack come in SEO. We've seen them roll out SEO updates that they had to pull back because they completely broke things. Yeah. We saw a Gmail Slack for a bid, as I call it, 10 different clients suddenly, high domain rep, high IP rep, hitting the primary tab. Long-term clients suddenly went to spam for about a week, and then all of a sudden they were back in the inbox. So I theorize that Gmail did try an algo update. Again, nobody's sitting in their offices talking, working together, looking at each other's code. They're all remote. I think they've got remoted down. And I think 2021 is going to be a very different year. Certainly the promotions tab on November 18th, we saw a much stiffer promotions tab algo come out. I saw lots of clients suddenly in the promotions tab. And that endured, of course, through Black Friday and into December. And we've seen them relax now. Mm-hmm. But it's typical that they test things out during the holiday season, and then they slowly roll it out. And right around, oddly enough, April 1st, April Fool's Day, we see a new algo mature. I'm gonna put my last dollar on that and bet that this will occur and that we will see a new algo. We will probably see new features. It's a typical Gmail cycle. Every 3 years, we've seen it go on forever. Something is coming.
Yeah.
Right now, the promotions tab is your biggest problem. And the promotions tab algo seems to stiffen and then relax and stiffen and relax. Again, 30 active clients, able to measure it. So I can see what's going on. I'll throw you a real big bone right now because I always like to offer some value right up front anytime I'm interviewing. You need to cut your Microsoft delivery back to 60-day engaged. We've tested this highly. I mean, I'm letting on with a real big one here, just for listening to us. I'm not here to sell anything. Of course, your authority will, but you need to cut your Gmail delivery off at some point. We all know, but Microsoft do not mail beyond 60-day engaged, open and or click.
And so, okay, so let's talk about that for a second, because I think we may have just lost people there when we're talking about 60-day engage. And just for the listeners, this is one of the hardest decisions everybody had to make, including myself, but one of the best decisions. And that was when he talks about engagement in the last 60 days, that somebody has opened or clicked or interacted with an email. If you have somebody on your list that has not opened an email from you in the last 60 days, that's on a Microsoft, be it like Hotmail or Outlook or any of those.
Finish in live.
Yeah. You got to cut them. You got to cut them loose. And the reality is, as I said, when I took over this company, hundreds of thousands and couldn't get the deliverability up. And, we did the typical bounce from, oh, let's try this platform, or maybe it's the IP, or maybe it's the content or whatever. It wasn't. It's the fact that we were mailing too many people that were not engaging with our list. And so I remember when we had to salvage this, we cut it back to 60 days. If they had, and our list went from hundreds of thousands to like 15,000. And as a marketer, you're just like, oh God, you letting that go. It feels like you're just giving money away. But that was the turning point for us. And since then, same thing. We have not changed that policy. If they're not opening, we're removing them. And our results speak for themselves. And so for everybody listening, this is hard to swallow if you have a list that you've been building for years. I get that. But if they're not listening, they're not engaged, and it's damaging your potential to reach the people that are listening. So back to you. Okay, 60 days. So for Microsoft, what about Gmail?
Gmail, the default should be around 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
So I also want to say, I've had this secret tool that I've used for about the last 4 years. And I haven't talked about it publicly, but now I've really come to the point at which I think everyone should know about this. It's called Google Postmasters. Google it. It's real easy to set up, follow the help file, create the text record. It'll take a little while for you to see data. One of the Google Postmasters at one time really revealed the full logo. Now it's not all that it's cracked up to be, but it will tell you if you have problems. And you can spy, and here's the big thing, you can spy on the IP quality of your ESP. That's really hard to do. You never really know whether or not you're in the good, the bad, or the ugly, or the great, the high reputation IPs. Google Postmasters. This will tell you enough to decide whether or not you need a deliverability team member. We come in many flavors. There's a lot of us out there these days. There's at least 20 new people that have come around since we last talked 5 years ago. But Google Postmasters will tell you whether or not you need to go find a deliverability team member. And I'm telling you, Derek, I think that every team either needs to be trained by someone like me that knows what they're doing, or has me in their back pocket, or one of my compatriots.
Gotcha, yeah.
Google Postmasters will tell you if you have a problem. Most people will enable Google Postmasters. The data will be blank. There will be nothing there. And they throw up their hands, it doesn't work, and they never look at it again. You need someone that understands Postmasters, or a team member to be trained to understand Postmasters, because it does reveal a lot of what's going on. And it will certainly reveal if you're mailing too much of the list. Here's the thing, every list is unique, Derek. There is not a one size fits all. Do not listen to any advice anyone gives you on Facebook. Your list is unique, and I'm talking to your listeners. They're completely different. And I proved this to myself time and time again after I've been 100% in the deliverability agency business for 7 years now. It's not one size fits all. You have something called lead duration. And lead duration is completely different for every list. Sometimes it's very short, 2 weeks. Sometimes it's 4 months. Sometimes it's, good Lord.
So just
I've got to mail in 8 months out, 8 months of non-engagers. And Gmail loves them, and Infusionsoft loves them. It's different for everyone.
So, okay, sir, when you say lead duration, what does that mean?
It means how long the lead is interested in what you say.
Yes. Okay.
Just
and you're right. It is totally different for every business. If somebody just subscribed to something on an impulse purchase, and once they've made it, they're done, right? Somebody who invests in a financial stock trading, that could be years where they're interested in that kind of stuff. So yeah, you're 100% right. So duration is key, and that's gonna relate to that engagement time. Now, when we talk about platforms, and I know this is something that so many people struggle with, is choosing the platform. And it's funny because I think most people, their first instinct when their deliverability sucks is to leave the platform and go somewhere else. Yep. And because, this platform has bad deliverability. Now, back in the day, there were platforms that had bad deliverability and platforms that had good deliverability. But if we're dealing with the the bigger players, the Ontraports, the Infusionsofts on the info business side, the Get Responses, Awebers, or the Active Campaign, stuff like that. Are they all pretty on par with each other these days?
This is something I've been talking about, and I actually wrote a big article about it. Again, inspired by people giving out inaccurate information in a Facebook group. Mm-hmm. All email platforms have great delivery. They also have good delivery, and they also have bad delivery. Your email platform should be selected by the features that you need and great responsive support. You have to earn your place on the great IPs. You have to earn your place in the good IPs, which is just fine. Good is wonderful too. If you earn your place in the bad IPs, well, you're going to be on Facebook saying such and such sucks. Every platform has thousands of IPs. Good God, MailChimp is the biggest sender of email, commercial email in the world. SendGrid is number 2. They have tens of thousands of IPs. And we don't have people sitting there at their keyboard deciding, oh, we're going to put this guy on a bad IP. We don't like him. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work that way. These ESPs have matured massively. They're run by AI and machine learning, and it's the machines that decide where you go. Now, if you really piss people off, you will show up on the compliance dashboard, and they may just decide to manually move you. But for the most part, you're looking at machines, and we are smarter than machines, and we can make them like us. It's not that hard, but you have to earn your place on a great IP, and you select your ESP by the features and responsive great support. And one thing that's really helped a lot of my clients is bringing all of us together with a rep, with a customer service success rep that knows the platform inside now. Now they're actually doing their job. I've had great success with Infusionsoft, Ontraport, Maripost, and Active Campaign. But you have to ask for a rep, and you have to force them to engage with you. They're there. You just have to ask, and you have to be ready. These people have very short time. They move very fast, but they can tell you what their problems are. Because I can tell you what your problem is with delivery. Your marketing department knows what they're doing, but your ESP knows what they're doing. When you bring all three of those together, then you have a team working together. And if you can't get a personal rep from your ESP, then you should be thinking about doing what I call vendor hopping.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And the reason I dove into that question is because I'm trying to dissuade the listeners who have crappy deliverability from blaming their email service provider and platform hopping, right? Because typically that's, yeah. So, okay. So here's getting into the so exciting topic of IPs. At what level, because we use dedicated IPs, I don't share an IP anymore, right? Because we're sending 1 million+ emails a month. I want to know the reputation. I want to manage the reputation. So we pay for that dedicated IP. But for the average small business, they're not going to go on a dedicated IP. They're on a shared IP. Yep. What's your advice for people? At what level should they go to a dedicated IP? At what volume should they go to a dedicated IP versus staying on the shared?
Okay, so a dedicated IP, number one, you're gonna get, for the most part, a dead IP that has no email being sent on it, and you're gonna go through a warm-up process. And if you're making money with your list, when you move to a dedicated IP and go through the warm-up process over the course of 40 days, you're going to lose a lot of money. Yeah. Rarely do I want a client on a dedicated IP, because depending on the ESP, the email platform, SendGrid, they ain't going to help you. I mean, they're not going to say, "Oh, I'm going to fix your Microsoft." No, you're on your own. Right. But dedicated IPs come in a lot of different flavors. Again, having a customer service rep, having connections with the deliverability department, having a deliverability expert that talks their language on those calls. Everyone should have one. If you're making, $500,000, $1 million a year, you should splurge a little bit and pay someone a small amount of money to retain the guy for a year. Find someone that's your match. Dedicated IPs are great, but there's wonderful pool IPs out there that you can sign up for and send an email today, not spend a month fixing it as God knows what someone else did to that IP. It's not going to have problems. It's not going to have spam traps. It's not going to be blacklisted. It's just going to be a virgin. And that's what we call a virgin IP. Or a IP that's been retired and allowed to rest. You are starting from scratch. Most of what's said around blacklists and delivery is just, it's ancient history, like you talked about vendor hopping 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Dedicated IP is wonderful. It has a lot of advantages. However, I'd rather have my clients on a big pool IP of 10, 15 IPs and a high quality one that, again, you can spy on the quality of said IP through Google Postmasters. You can spy on what the ESP is doing. Now, I have great relations with a number of the ESPs we've talked about, right at the top, the Postmasters, the compliance department, the CEOs at times. But you got to watch them because it's not people that move you to crappy IPs. It's the machines. And God knows, we've seen Terminator enough times and enough versions and reruns of that. You got to watch those machines. They make mistakes and you need to call them out. Again, dedicated IPs are wonderful. If you want someone, now you've got to actually manage their reputation. You can't just sit back and go, oh, I'm a dedicated IP. Everything's good. I got no problems. No, you actually have to do more work. It has many advantages. And it has, as we're going to be talking about soon, the ability to more closely manage things. Because a dedicated IP allows me to not know that we are ever going to possibly be relegated to a lesser IP by the machines. And now we have to do our job.
Yeah, I guess the flip side of it is, and because I'm on dedicated IPs, you're right. It's a heck of a lot more work because we have to do all that back end monitoring and systems and stuff like that and make sure it's clean. But also, you don't have the advantage of the volume of other senders helping build reputation on that IP. And so, I think for most people, starting on a shared IP and a pool is probably the best bet.
Let me jump in here with something else about dedicated IPs. You got to mail the list three times a week.
Yes.
No taking a week off. No going on vacation and letting the list sit. When you come back and all of a sudden set a bunch of volume, dedicated IPs like volume that's like this. What they don't like is the Rocky Mountains. I'm looking at right out my front window outside Denver. You do not want to see spikes like this of email traffic. It will, especially at Gmail, kill the domain reputation and kill the IP reputation. You can't take time off. I mean, great. I want to take a month off and, go play. And it's a slow season. And it's my birthday. It's Christmas, whatever. No, you have to schedule emails to be sent during that period.
Yep.
And or you have to have a team that takes care of that. The old days of, Frank Kerr and John Reese, Evan Pig and all those guys, remember they used to take from Thanksgiving till January 1st off?
And then just unload.
Nobody does that anymore. Everybody's sending email always. And that's because of domain reputation in Gmail, in Google Postmasters.
Okay, so let's talk about domain reputation for a second, because we've been talking about IP, right? But that's just one piece of the puzzle. And so when we're mailing on shared IPs and stuff, people tend to focus on the IP. Oh, the IP's reputation. But that's not as relevant as it once was, is it? It's more your domain that is the issue.
Right. And That's Gmail not letting you vendor hop because you can't take that. Oh, I'm getting crappy delivery over here. Your domain reputation is garbage. It's low or it's bad in the Postmaster graph. You can't take that domain and go over to vendor B and start up again. It follows you. You can't just register new domains and start sending email on their behalf. You just can't do that. Gmail has really, number one, given us great information. And number two, no more vendor hopping and just being able to bounce. It doesn't work like that anymore. And we should really talk about coming up here in a minute, why and how domain reputation is connected to Postmasters and why it matters. Because again, most of what's being said around Facebook, around SPF, DKIM, DMARC, etc., is just again, I love this line. It's a pile of crap.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's dig into that. Why is it a pile of crap?
You do not have to look very far in any Facebook group that you're in. You post and say, hey, I'm having deliverability issues. You'll see at least 2 to 3 people say, oh, set SPF and DKIM up right. Mm-hmm. Now, they were magic bullets 7, 8, 10 years ago because, well, nobody else had DKIM or SPF set up properly. Right. SPF, DKIM, and now DMARC are not delivery silver bullets, Derek. They are simply tools that allow us to better measure what's going on behind the scenes with high-end software. It allows us to talk to Gmail. It allows us to talk to our ESP. It allows us to get lots of data back. There's plenty of on behalf of mailers, as it's called. AWeber, you can mail on behalf of. Same thing for GetResponse, MailChimp. Everybody allows on behalf of mailers. You can see on behalf of mailers when you open an email in Gmail, because it'll say their email address via some crazy email address or subdomain, etc., of their ESP. You could do just fine without SPF and DKIM set on your ESP. On behalf of mailers, they're just fine. What SPF, DKIM, and now DMARC allows us to do is really see deeply into what's going on behind the scenes and truly measure delivery. They're just tools. They're not magic bullets. And being able to see behind the scenes with, well, software that I know you use, software you know I use, Google Postmasters that everyone should have set up, that allows you to see behind the scenes and spy on what's going on and know what Gmail thinks of you. And if they don't like you, well, then you need to do something about it. And again, when we go back to not mailing non-engagers, it's not me that says that. It's not your ESP that says that. It's Gmail that said that in their 2016 Algo update. No more mailing the unengaged. This is not, mail that comes offering me the special deal for Hot Rod Magazine anymore. It's not a mailing list anymore. It's people. And that's one of the concepts I've talked about on stage last year. Gmail is people.
Okay. So.
Too technical?
No, not at all. Now.
Missed the ball or what?
No, you're absolutely hitting this. I'm just trying to figure out which thing I wanted to dig into now, because there's some really interesting things here. Now, let's go back to domain rep for a second. So, sure. And this is something that you taught me a long time ago, and I think this is where people make mistakes, is they don't understand Google's ability to track what's going on. So let's say I switch vendors, and at the same time, so I've switched IPs, I also switch domains. But I start mailing the same list again. Now, and so, but here's the question, and this is where I think a lot of people don't understand. If I have a list of 20,000 or 30 or 40,000 people that I've been mailing regularly over at GetResponse from domain A, but my deliverability sucks, so I run over to Ontraport and I start mailing my list from domain B, but it's the same list. How do they know?
Well, I started saying about 4 or 5 years ago when we first talked about the promotions tab on your podcast. I started seeing then that I believed about 45% of delivery. I had yet to pick up the term deliverability. I still hate it. I'm a delivery guy. I'm a postmaster. I've been at this for 12 years. I say email delivery. It doesn't matter what word you use, it's all the same. Now, I started seeing back then that I believed about 45% of deliverability was based on your domain name, and the other, say, 55% was based on the quality of the IP at your ESP. About 2 years ago, I swapped that around, and I started seeing that 70% of your ability to get to the inbox is based on your domain name, the domain name and your from address. But yet your ESP has to do its job. It's still sitting at, if you have a crappy IP, you've already shot yourself in the foot before you even put any bullets in the gun.
Yeah.
So they have to do their job, but now you have to do your job. And believe me, Gmail knows everything about us.
Oh, they absolutely do. Now, but as a sender, I think something I heard you mention in the past was the concept of a list footprint, right? So if you've been mailing this list on a regular basis, and then you switch IPs and domain names, but continue to mail that list, Google's algorithm is going to pick it up as a footprint, and they're going to know this is the same sender. Is that still true to an extent?
Well, to some extent, the machines. Okay, so let's look at your inbox.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at my Gmail inbox, I open emails whether or not it says the from name text. Mm-hmm. Now the machines do not understand us people that well. They're trying to, believe me, but people look at Frank Kern. I've been subscribing to Frank Kern's email list for 15 years because his emails are interesting. Mm-hmm. I always have fun watching a Frank Kern video, and I always, learn some concepts and principles from his marketing. Mm-hmm. I'm not Russell Brunson, the greatest marketer in the world. I'm just Chris Lang, but I always learn a little something. But I open emails because it says Frank Kern in the from name text. Now the machines, they don't care about the from name text. They care about the domain and the handle in your email address. And that's just, the machines are supposedly, Terminators are going to take over the world. They're not quite there yet. Let's be honest, but the machines have a lot of data on us. And they know that X amount of people opened emails from the from name text and the from address, handle, and domain.
Yeah.
Now, when you change things, you confuse the machines. Now, there's a lot of people like to jump domains. There's plenty of black hat. There's plenty of aggressive marketers out there. Mm-hmm. I myself have always thrived on making the machines happy because if they have a ton of data, that X amount of people in Gmail open emails from chris@keywebdata.com, my from address since 2003. Mm-hmm. I'm not a big domain jumper. I actually hate it. It also breaks whitelisting. It breaks contacts. Mm-hmm. The smaller cables and ISPs hate it especially. You want to build reputation and long-term reputation, identification, and authority. Yeah. People recognize your from address. The machines like data they can understand, and authority is, well, that's what goes on in the background that we can't possibly understand because Gmail holds all that data. Did they open the email? Did you delete it on site? Did you actually read it? Did you scroll through it? Did you flick to the bottom to see how long it is because you don't have time? Gmail's got all that data. Mm-hmm. And when you jump domains, they're starting over from scratch and they don't know who you are. And what started in 2016 is Gmail decided, instead of being innocent until proven guilty, they all will change and you are guilty until proven innocent. Yeah. And that was the big change in 2016.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're almost out of time. Last question for you is surrounding content, okay? How is your content in the email you're sending affecting deliverability?
Spam words are a thing of the past.
Yeah.
Now, if you use free once in your body, you'll be fine. Use free 5 times, it's cumulative. Mm-hmm. It's cumulative. Obviously, if you're using swipe copy and every affiliate in the world is also mailing it, plus the big Pacific Rim spammers, where the big spam comes from, they're mailing those affiliate offers too. So if you're first to the table, if you're mailing stuff that's already known spam, swipe copy, list rentals, etc., then you're gonna start to get content filters. Again, it's footprint. How much did the machine see you when you send emails that are completely unique? This is why I hate nothing but follow up, Derek. I hate the pure automations. You gotta mail the list. You gotta mail the list and send unique content. So with that said, we're gonna coin that phrase that I promised you. So we have delivery, we have deliverability, and now Jack Humphrey and I just coined this phrase this morning on a call, measurability. Mm-hmm. If you're not measuring email delivery with high-end software, not the cheap bot list, high-end software, you don't really know what's going on with your list. Measurability, it directly affects your deliverability. Mm-hmm. It allows you to react to problems, because if you don't know what the problems are, how can you take action? And lastly, you do not know how to react without measurability and experience to affect deliverability. That's that big phrase I wanted to coin. And I have to thank Jay Humphrey for coming up with that this morning.
Well, and I think that's absolutely brilliant, and people need to start looking at those metrics. You've shared a lot of ways to do that. One thing I wanted to highlight just surrounding content, because I know a lot of people focus on that content, and what you said there, I think it needs to be resaid. It's so important, is that content is no longer as relevant to your deliverability as it once was. I mean, there used to be a spam list that you would never mention certain keywords. That is no longer the case, but there's thresholds. And so stay away from hypey, spammy language. Stay away from, probably a dozen links in your email, stuff like that. But the whole point
too, where those links go to.
Yeah.
Just because you can mask it with a redirect, Gmail's been following those things all the way down to the source 10 years, just like they have in SEO. Yeah. I will say one thing. There is, when you have lots of spammers sending copy with certain words in it, then you can get trapped up in words. I have a client, every time he says they're on a dating app, again, everything's anonymized. I never share who's you or anything beyond concepts and principles. Every time he puts dating app in the subject line, he goes to spam.
Yeah.
So again, look at your spam folder and look at what is like tinnitus. One of the biggest spam words there is. Put tinnitus in your subject line. And right now we're seeing the subject line be carrying a far more heavy weight than body copy.
Interesting. Okay.
Because, well, what gets the email open? The subject line. Why wouldn't the machines look at the subject line more heavy? Again, lots of data, big measurability, lots of active clients, the ability to crunch data and get advice back from my clients. Because I didn't figure out that you can only mail Microsoft to 60 days. One of my clients did. And again, value add, I always show up with something that's going to make you money and no one else is going to tell you.
Awesome. Well, on that note, before we wrap things up, where can people connect with you?
Well, when you're in the spam folder, when you're in the promotions tab, you better call Chris Lang. And that URL, of course, is bettercallchrislang.com. You can see my glowing testimonials. You can see who I've worked with, lots of proof, and you can book a call with me. Close, don't close, friendly call. I don't care. I take all comers right now. And I'm looking forward to hearing from your listeners.
And just as I said at the beginning, I am one of those testimonials, the proof's in the pudding. So thank you so much for being here, Chris, today. And again, just sharing, offering value and not filtering, not saving the good stuff for behind the scenes. I truly appreciate that. And hopefully we can do another check-in in a year from now and see where things are at.
Certainly. We look forward to Gmail changing the algo. it just makes things challenging because to me, this is fun. Thank you, Derek. Thank you so much for having me. Great conversation. I've enjoyed myself.
Awesome. And for our listeners, look, you guys, I know email deliverability may not be the most exciting thing in the world, but the fact of the matter is you work hard to get those emails. So you might as well do the work to make sure that you can actually send to those emails. And there's a lot of important stuff that you can take away from this interview. But the only way it's going to work for you is if you take action and apply it. So now it's your turn to go forth, use what you've learned, take action, and start getting to the inbox and start making more money. And as always, if you like what you heard on this podcast, please leave us a rating, leave us a review at your favorite podcast app. And if you want the show notes for this, any links that were mentioned, head on over to projectignite.com. And that's a wrap. We will see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to another info-packed episode of the Project Ignite podcast with Derek Gale.
Any links mentioned, along with an entire transcript of this episode, can be found at projectignite.com/podcast.
And to make sure you never miss another episode, go to iTunes or SoundCloud now and subscribe.